God. Okay, we're on record now. So, okay, we're doing raised beds, and it's too bad we're not doing it outside because I would show you a bunch of stuff, but that's okay. We'll do it here. And if you want to see some examples, we have four different types of raised beds here at the nursery that we have. We got an area, we call it our raised bed. And we have four different, some of them they're built with landscape timber, some of them are built with 2x12s. We have some of the grow bags, and we have one made out of stone. Actually, we have five because we have one made out of stone, and then we have some with the raised bed brackets. So there's different ways you can do this on that. So I'm going to talk about, let's talk about the benefits first. Why do you want to build a raised bed? There's many benefits, okay? You have perfect soil on that. You're going to build this bed, and so you're going to add soil, and you can put great and wonderful soil in it so that you don't have to worry about, I have to, you still should amend it some, but I don't have to amend it. I got good soil. It drains well. Okay, now keep in mind that a raised bed is nothing more than a big pot, a big pot. So you don't fill it with soil from the garden. You can use garden soil, but if you use it, you're going to mix compost. We'll talk about the soil in a little bit, but you're going to have excellent soil in a raised bed. It's going to be above the ground, so it's going to warm up quicker in the spring. So you're able to plant things a little sooner than normal. The same way in the fall or winter, it keeps it a little bit warmer. It's super easy to put a cold frame or build a little hoop house that you can extend your season. I have lettuce not lettuce, but spinach. Spinach is much hardier than lettuce. I have spinach growing in mine that has been growing, well, it's been there all winter. It's been alive. It doesn't grow really in the winter, but it doesn't die. So then here pretty quick with this cooler or warmer weather, it'll take off and go, and then I can have spinach much sooner than any of you guys are going to have it. So you're able to extend the season, let's say. And then you put in good soil, you don't have any weeds. And you really don't have, and I don't really know that a lot of times you have that much problem anyway, but you don't have a lot of problems with insects either. So it's a super way to do it. You build it high enough and you don't even have to get on your knees. You don't have to, you can build it so you can have where it's almost like a seat that you can sit there and harvest or plant or put the 3 weeds or whatever weeds you have. So you can do it that way too. So there's a lot of advantages to it on that. Location, you want it, it's just like a garden, so you want it as much sun as possible on that. Full sun would be the best. If, let's say, I'll just make up a scenario. I can put it on the east or I can put it on the west up against the house. I know it's not going to it'll get morning sun or get afternoon sun. Give it afternoon sun. If you're doing it out in the open, if most times your raised beds are rectangles, put it so that you're running the bed itself, the long way runs north and south on that. That way the plants can get the morning sun and the afternoon sun. If you have a tall plant, let's say I'm planting a tomato and I'm planting some, I don't know what I'm trying to think, maybe a pepper. Pepper's a lot smaller or shorter than a tomato. I would put the tomato on the north side and the pepper on the south side on that, so that if there is any shadows, they're not getting it on that. So a north-south direction. And if you have it on a slope, that's fine. You need to, you may want to, either your bed's going to be on a slope, or you're going to put, half of it or 3/4 or whatever you need to level it out. And that's possible too, just depending on what you want. The size, or what do you build it out of? Let's say, okay. You can build it out of about anything. And actually you could even do one without sides. But the problem is if you build up 6 or 8 inches worth of soil and you don't have sides on it, at the end it's going to slurp out. So I think it'd be best if you had some sort of, I'm going to say, sides to it. It can be built out of stone. It can be built out of wood. It can be actually some of the grow bags I would consider a raised bed, and those you just fill with soil and you're ready to go on that. Cinder blocks, some of these, it's super interesting. This is the advantage I have of working in a garden center, what people have done. I have one customer that replaced his deck and he used all his deck boards for the raised bed. I've had some of them do cinder blocks. You can do, I've had some of them, I've had some that are elaborate, and I thought, well, this is just because they really like it, that they had somebody come in, a stonemason, and build it out of stone. It looks very impressive. It's not the most economical way, but it was really nice looking on that. So you can do it out of any kind of material you want. Usually they're rectangles because a lot of them are built out of wood, and your wood increments are 8 foot. So a traditional size bed, let's say, is usually 4 by 8. And part of that is because that's how you buy lumber. So I can cut the 4 foot in half. I cut the 8 foot in half and make 4. That's my ends. And then I have whole boards, 8 foots on the sides, and it's super easy. So, part of it depends on what you have available, what you want to do on that. A lot of people build them out of landscape timbers. That's what I have. I have 6 raised beds at home. 5 of them, all 6 of them are built out of landscape timbers. I am a little disappointed in my landscape timbers. They have shrunk them so much that I don't think, and they may be a little older than I think, but I don't think my beds are 10 years old. And I have some that are rotting already because of the landscape timbers. So I'm going to have to replace them. When I do, I'm going to use treated lumber rather than the landscape timbers. I have mine about 5 ties high, which means it's about 15 inches. If I do it again, I'm probably going to go to 24 inches because the boards are 12 inches. And I think I'm going to like that a lot better because 15 inches is just a little too short to sit on. I mean, you can sit on it, but it'd be nice if it was a little bit higher on that. And that's just laziness on my part. But so that's a way to do it. Now, there's all kinds of ways to do those. You can do, you can nail them and do a board like that. You can put a 4x4 in the corner. Part of it depends on how much you're into this and how elaborate you want it. We have started, I don't know what the deal is, but we have started selling a whole lot of, these are raised bed brackets. And I hope you can see it, but right here in the, basically it's a piece of metal. And the boards go in it, and actually it shows on the box somewhere that it has tools, and it's got a bar through it because you don't need any tools. And actually, if you wanted to do it that way, I would say if you don't have any tools, that's fine. If you want to do a 4x8 bed, when you go buy the lumber, they will cut, most of the lumber yards will cut the boards for you. So you can say, I need these cut in 4 foot increments, 2 of them, and they would cut those, and boom. This will hold, and actually you can cheat a little bit. It's about 12 inches. I like the beds a little deeper than that. And so if I were going to use these, I would put a 2x4 down and then the 2x12 on top of it. And then you'll have a couple of inches above the brackets, but you still have the structure of the brackets. Probably the only disadvantage to those is that it's metal. So over time it will deteriorate. But, we have some, and I don't even know how old they are. They're probably, gosh darn, they're probably 10 years old and they've started to rot. But, that's 10 years. So that's as long as the landscape timbers last. The stone or the cinder blocks obviously are probably the most durable because they're not going to break down. The stone, depending on how big you get, is going to be the pits for, I have to work with it. But, so whatever works for you as far as whatever you want to build with it. Traditionally, they're 4 foot wide, and the 4 foot is a good width because you can reach into the bed. Remember, a raised bed, the advantage of it is you don't want to walk in it. When you walk in a regular garden, you compact the soil and you pack it down. With a raised bed, you don't ever have to get in the bed. So if you have a 4 foot bed, you can reach across on this side and get it. I can go to the other side, I can reach across, and I don't have any reason at all to step into that bed. And that is the most ideal situation because you have loose, fluffy soil and the plant roots can grow everywhere on that as far as that goes. Now, 8 foot is an increment that we use because of lumber. All right. If you're building this out of stone, or my deck boards are 12 foot long. Okay, you're great. You may need to do some sort of a support in the middle, but that would be whatever works for you. You can, I just thought of this, there's several different, I'm sure there's a ton of them on the internet, of companies that actually sell raised beds on that you can get. I was at the customer's house the other day that had some, that were, and maybe that's what they were cattle, they looked like cattle waterers on that. And so they were made out of tin. And now the thing is, if you go buy some, that's fine, but make sure you put some drainage in the bottom, or you'll have a giant pot that doesn't drain, and the plants won't like it. Because, you know, you think, well, I'll watch the water, and that's fine. You can watch the water, but someday it's going to rain, and it's going to rain too much on that. So, so that's kind of size, whatever, you know, however you want it. And then building it, you know, it's just a matter of what works for you on that. And they're simple, and, you know, I'm going to say whatever works on that. If you don't want to do any of that, I call them grow bags. We have the brand name is Smart Pot. They're made out of, getting real technical, it's polypropylene. Polypropylene is simply rubber that is porous on that. I have long johns that are made out of polypropylene, and I love them because they're warm. But it is a fabric material. It looks like fabric, okay? It lasts forever. Well, they'll tell you, if you ask them, they will say it lasts 3 to 4 years. Ours out here is probably 6 to 8 years old already, and it doesn't look like it's in any chance of deteriorating down the road on that. The advantage is you will never, ever overwater it. And really with a good soil in your raised bed, that's the case too. But, you know, the advantage, if we sell, not necessarily all of them, but we sell a lot of them for apartment people. You know, I'm going to put it on my patio, I'm going to put it on my deck, but I don't want it there all the time. So they pot it up, they grow what they want. At the end of the season, they can take and dump the soil out, fold it up. It's a piece of cloth that goes in the bottom of the closet, and it's great till next year on that. So that's an instant one. And they have some they call Big Bag and Big Bag Junior. And I think Big Bag it's a circle, but it's 5 foot across. So it'll grow quite a few plants just that way too. So there's an easy way to do it. Okay, soil on that. Remember what I said about it being a big pot. So you want soil that will drain. You want soil that will drain. If you're going to take your garden soil, you want to mix it. I tell people you're going to mix it, garden soil 50-50 with, if you have topsoil or garden soil, and then 50% compost, because you want that to drain well. Okay, now we carry, and I'm sure there's others, we carry it's called raised bed mix. And basically what it is, it's compost, it's soil, it's got some core in, it's got some minerals, it's got some humates, it's got some really good stuff in it. Okay, soil and compost, probably you know what those are. Core is actually the fuzz on coconuts. And it's an excellent media that holds moisture on that. So it holds the moisture a little bit better. The minerals, actually, when you look at it really closely, it looks like rocks, okay? Those are minerals. And so it's kind of like a slow release fertilizer. Every time you water, some of it's released, and so the plant gets some nutrients all along. Humates, and I think it's got basalt and Mount Morillite. Those are micronutrient type things that the plants will benefit from. The story I tell with the raised beds, remember I have 6, so the first 2 I built, and I thought, well, you know, I tell everybody that this is great and wonderful stuff. I've never used it, so let's take one of my beds and make it. So that's what I did. And I was like, okay, this is great. This is great. And like 3 years later, I was like, you stupid idiot. You've got to fertilize these plants if you want them to grow. You know, for some reason I hadn't fertilized that bed. So I decided to fertilize it. So I fertilized it, and I kind of watched it. And, you know, I'm sure there was some benefit to it, but I didn't see any benefit. And that was 3 years later. And the reason I think that it worked very well was because of the minerals on that. It's in a form, let's say, that it takes a long time for it to break down. So you can, on those, you rip it open and dump it in. You get everything dumped in, you can plant right away on that. How much you use will be based, and the same with the soil and the compost, on the size of your bed. On the raised bed mix, if you want a simple formula, you take the length times the width times the depth, and all in the same increments. If it's foot, it's foot. If it's inches, it's inches. And actually you should do foot, because that gives you take that, and that's how many cubic feet you need of soil. And the raised bed bags are 1.5 cubic foot. So you take that figure and divide it by 1.5, and that's how many bags you need. Now, what you're going to find when you do this math, if you have a 4x8 bed, it comes up to, I believe it's 22 bags. And you're going to say, oh, 22 bags, that's a lot. I don't think I need that much. You need that much on that. So keep it in mind. Now, it will settle some, and even if you do your own, it will settle some. But keep that in mind. It's not going to settle that much, so you don't have to do anything probably till next year on that. As far as cost goes, and I don't know what the cost is off the top of my head, I'm sorry, but I have done some math for people I haven't really done it this year, to be honest with you, but I have done it before, and I found that the raised bed mix, because of the minerals and the core and those type of things that are in it, if you buy one bag of that for your soil compost mix, the raised bed mix is cheaper on that. So it's just, I mean, it's easy too. If you do the soil and the compost, you can dump them in the bed, but you should dump like a layer of soil, then a layer of compost, layer of soil, layer of compost. Don't just, I'm going to dump all the soil, I'm going to dump all the compost on that. It'd be better if they were mixed up. If you have, on mine, I actually have a giant compost pile. I have a very large compost pile at home, and I use 100% compost, and that has worked very well. I will add some of our Fox Farm soil conditioner sometimes. I love it so much, I just add some. But you can do straight 100% compost. 100% compost is a really light mix on that, and so it works really well. I would not, you know, the only compost, well, actually, the Cottonburg compost is what we sell as compost, and I would not use it 100% straight because it's so porous that you cannot keep it wet. And remember that you're going to water, well, I guess I haven't told you that. You're going to water a lot with a raised bed because the soil is so porous. And probably within reason, the more you water, within reason, the better off you are. The story I tell now, really realize that some of these things I'm telling you is because I've screwed up too. But I have green beans. I like green beans. So I put one bed is all green beans. And I usually, what I would do is I would pick a box of green beans, and then I like to can them. So I take them inside and put it in the refrigerator. So until the next time I pick green beans, and I have another box, and that's enough to do a thing of green beans. So then one year we had, it just so happened, and my green beans look great. And I thought I was getting really, really good, crop. Well, in the course of a week, we had 12 inches of rain. Now, it was not 12 inches, like 10 inches one day and 2 inches the next. It was 2 inches and 3 inches and 2 inches and 1 inch. So it was a very spread out 12 inches. I went to pick the green beans and I got 2 boxes, and I'm like, what on earth? And so I'm sitting there thinking, what did I do different? And I hadn't fertilized lately. And so I'm sitting there and I'm like, well, the only really difference is the amount of rain we got. And so I took them and I started watering them, and a whole lot more than I had been. And I got 2 boxes of green beans every time. So that tells you you're not going to give them too much, again, within reason. But what I do, mine is sitting on ground. Some people will sit them on concrete, and that's fine. I like to sit them on the ground because then the roots, if they want to, they can grow into the soil. But what I do is I water them until, I'm standing in water because it came out the bottom. Or I can, with the landscape timbers, I can see the water coming through between the timbers, and I know, okay, I've watered down 3 timbers, 4 timbers, that's good on that. So that's kind of how I tell on that. I also thought of something when you're building these. If you're doing them on top of the ground, if you're not doing them in an old garden area, I would take the soil, like I'm going to plant like it's yard or maybe you've killed the grass, but I would take that soil that's inside of the raised bed, the existing soil, before you put anything in there, and take and dig the shovel and flip it upside down. Don't necessarily make it grind, take your shovel and beat it down. Leave big chunks, because then what happens is you have kind of a transition zone. Let's say it's 12 inches deep. Okay, you've taken a chunk, and let's say it's 4 inches. Okay, you flipped it upside down. So when you put good soil in it, you have 8 inches of really, really good soil. And now all of a sudden you have 4 inches of soil that's really good, and then this existing soil, and then you're into your original ground. And so you have the existing soil. And so what that does is create kind of a transition zone. If that plant wants to go deeper, it's 8 inches, it hits the transition zone, it says, wait a minute, what are you doing here? Well, wait a second, I kind of recognize that. I recognize, it's a little different, but it's the same. And so they keep going. They go to the next 4 inches and they have the same conversation, but they keep going because they recognize it. So that's the way to do it. Sometimes you may, if you've had problems with critters, moles, voles, I will tell people to put down chicken wire to keep them from coming up. That's what I did with mine at the house. We've also done it with ours out here. Ours is in the field. The field, we know we have voles, and they have chewed through. We actually put weed mat down because we know we have tons of bindweed under there. And the first time we did it, we had a 12-inch raised bed, and we put it on top of the ground, and the bindweed came through the 12 inches of soil. So I'm like, okay, we can't grow a raised bed unless we do something different. So we moved it over, we put down weed mat, and then we have 12 inches of soil. So ours can't really grow into the soil, but underneath that, before we filled it with soil, we put chicken wire down to keep the voles out. Voles are little not insects, they're little animals that are between the size of a rat and a mouse, and they're big chewers, and they're herbivores. They'll get in, and they will, like when we plant sweet potatoes in the ground, sometimes we'll find where they've tunneled underneath. They're usually under the ground because they don't want to get eaten, and they will bite into our sweet potatoes. So we're trying to prevent them from getting into the stuff in the raised bed. So those are kind of 2 tips depending. And I would probably recommend the chicken wire even if you don't have problems, simply for the fact that I did this with mine. I pulled all the soil out, put the chicken wire down, and put the soil back, and that's a lot of work. So that would be a easy preventative that you may not ever need, but it's nice if you have it on that. Planting your raised beds, okay. You know, 4x8 isn't very much when you think about it. But okay, you drive out in the country, you go to the neighbor's yard that has a lot of, a big garden. And then you look, and then there's a row of potatoes, and then there's another row of potatoes, and there's 2 foot of space between the rows of potatoes. The reason they do that is because they're going to run the tiller down to keep the weeds out. Well, you don't need the tiller because you're in a raised bed, and hopefully you don't have any weeds because you're in a raised bed, or very few. So what you want to do is, when you look at the recommendation for spacing on that, okay, let's say on potatoes, it says your rows are 2 foot apart. Your individual plants may be 6 or 8 inches apart. So what you need to do, and actually on potatoes it's 12, let's say. Okay, so you need to plant them on 12-inch squares because you don't have any rows. And this isn't very big. So you want to get as much production out of those as possible. So you want to fill the bed. If you were doing onions, oh, well, okay, let's use garlic because I plant garlic. I plant garlic probably about every 4 inches apart. When you look at my garlic patch, it goes all the way across the bed. I have, I don't know, 3 or 4 rows, and they're all 4 inches apart. It's kind of like soldiers on that. So I'm utilizing every square inch of soil. When I do tomatoes, I put 2 tomatoes in my 4x8 bed. I know some of you have heard this. Sorry if it's redundant. I know it is, but I know some of you haven't. You know, my philosophy is I want to grow them as I want to push them as much as possible. I'm going to do everything I can to grow them as much as they potentially can. So I only have to grow 2 tomatoes. I don't have to grow 4 on that. So that's why I do 4. I mean, I'm sorry, 2 instead of 4. I think you could probably easily put 3 tomatoes in a 4x8 bed. Now, if you were in there last night, you heard me talk about my favorite is Jetstar. And I can tell you, because of the type of tomato it is, I stake them, it comes to the top, it goes to the bottom, it goes across, and by the time the end of the season is, it's on the ground. But that's okay. I don't mind. I'll just go to the other side and pick them on it. And it's usually in the middle of the bed, so I can go up one side and go around and then come down the side. I can't necessarily go walk through the whole thing, but I can get around it fairly well. But and then also keep in mind that because you can plant so early, you can do a lot of succession plantings. Okay. I plant lettuce into, like right now I'm going to plant lettuce and spinach. I mean, if I was anybody else, you could do radishes, carrots, cabbage, cauliflower, broccoli. Okay. And especially radishes and lettuce and spinach. You know, those aren't going to be around very long. So I could plant those at the end or plant the whole bed. I'm going to harvest the middle first. And then I may put a tomato in there. I know the tomato is going to take up the whole space, but right now it's not taking up the whole space. So I can have lettuce or spinach or something at the sides, and it gets hot and they don't do very well. So then those are gone on that. Well, then in the fall, you've got fall coming around. I can start a cabbage that's, again, it's a little plant, but I know I'm going to plant it, and then I'm going to take the tomato out and the cabbage goes boom. And so you can do some sequences of planting on it. You can even do succession plantings, like, okay, I plant green beans and I harvest them for a while, and I usually plant another crop later in the fall. And so then I'll have some a little bit later. It depends on what the plants is. Some of them will harvest all along. Some of them you can do, okay, I've got it in the spring, I can do it again in the fall. So there's all kinds of, I mean, you can produce a lot of vegetables off of a few raised beds. You know, my 6 raised beds, I can do tomatoes. I can can some. I can have plenty to eat because I love tomatoes. I do a ton of green beans. You know, I only plant what I like. I have a bed and a half of strawberries, and I will pick. It just kind of depends. Some years I kind of keep track. The year that I got the most, I got 5 gallons of strawberries off a 4x8 bed. So you can get, like I say, you can get a lot of food off of one plant as far as that goes. Now, it's almost 6, so I'm going to take, sorry, it's almost 7. So there's some questions. I'm going to take those, and if you have some more, holler. And if we have a little bit of time left, I may elaborate a little bit more. But okay, I've got, let's see, Culinary has a real cool cinder block raised bed in front of the restaurant. There you go. So you can see one for those who haven't. Is cotton burr mulch equivalent to coconut in nutrients and moisture retention? Somewhat in moisture retention. I would say it's the opposite. It's more lets it drain well rather than holding the moisture on that. Nutrients, in my opinion, the cotton burr will have more nutrients than the coconut coir. However, neither one of them have very much. They're more, I'm going to say, soil amendments that you use to make the soil loose so the roots can go out to, you know, if the roots have the potential to go out 2 foot, they can grow out 2 foot. If it's a harder soil, they may only grow out 1 foot. That's my little story about cow manure. People will tell me, oh, this cow manure is the greatest fertilizer I've ever used. These plants just do great with it. These plants do not do great with cow manure because it's fertilizer. They do great with cow manure because it loosens the soil and it lightens the soil up. And all of a sudden, the roots that want to grow 2 foot have been only growing 1 foot. Now they grow 2 foot. They grow true foot. That's twice as much nutrients and twice as much water that they can take up, even though you haven't done anything. And so you should get twice as much fruit on that. Oh, well, I'm just using the math easy, but you know, you should get more that way. So it's more of a soil amendment to keep it loose and fluffy rather than a nutrient. And that's the same, the coconut really doesn't, again, it doesn't have any nutrients. It's more of a mechanism to, kind of like a sponge, let's say. It soaks up the water and holds it, and then the plant will suck the water away from it. So, and the cotton burr, you use it like you in the raised bed, but like if you're putting it in the ground, you use it to soften and lighten the soil is basically what you're using it for. So hopefully those answered your questions. And I don't know, like I say, we do have some raised beds here. If you want to see some in action, we haven't planted anything yet. We will. We keep them pretty full. We've done tomatoes. Melons are one. You can grow anything in a raised bed. The one thing I would probably not really encourage you to do is corn. And part of it is because corn is an open pollinated plant. And what that means, or I'm sorry, a wind pollinated plant. So that means it needs wind. Okay, think of the cornfields you see out in the country. These suckers are 1/2 mile long. So when the wind blows, the pollen grows all the way, you know, it just keeps going and it pollinates itself. If you have a small bed, all of a sudden the wind blows and the pollen's way down the road. So you don't really get the pollination that you can. And it needs the pollen because every little kernel of corn is a silk that has been pollinated. So you've got to have good pollination to get a good corn crop. So if you want corn, come to the farmer's market if you don't have room for it. But you can grow just about anything. Now, the melons, the watermelons, the cantaloupe, the squashes, I would suggest sweet potatoes are probably another one. Sweet potatoes, you probably get a few more. I would probably suggest if your beds are 4x8, doing a bed of those because they want to go. I don't care. I'm more of a vegetable and a flower person than I am a lawn person. So if I happen to plant squash in my raised bed, they jump the curb, they jump the curb and they start growing, and they're growing. They drop down to the ground and grow. And so they're growing on the ground. I don't care. I mow around them and leave them alone on that. But if you wanted them, this nice, neat thing, you put them back in the bed and you keep them in the bed. And you need to leave them, as a general rule, if you want to keep getting whatever that crop is. So you really can't trim them back, so to speak. So that I would keep as one bed, because otherwise they're gonna take over. Now, cucumbers, squash. There are some varieties that are called patio or bush type. There's a bush cucumber, and they're not as big. I've grown them. I would say they're probably maybe a 3x3 plant. So they would nicely stay into your bed. They are the same cucumber that you harvest from the big ones. It's just the plant is smaller. With the plant being smaller, if you have one of those and one of the traditional ones, obviously you're going to get more cucumbers off of the traditional one. Now, if you are doing a big garden, usually your bush plants will produce more per acre, because you can put them closer together on that. But that would be an excellent choice for a raised bed. That I don't want to take it all up with all my squash. There's some zucchini, that's a bush. There's cucumbers. They really don't have any in watermelon or cantaloupe if you want those. You can also grow up where you put a trellis or a piece of lattice down the middle and grow up. And that's excellent for cucumbers. You can do cantaloupe that way, but if you do cantaloupe that way, you need to support the fruit, because it'll get too heavy and it'll fall off before it's ripe. Cucumbers, no big deal. You can go pull those. Part of it depends on what works for you. We did some TP ones last year, and I don't really like them personally, because it's hard to pick the ones that fall into here. If you would do a trellis that's kind of down the middle and they grow up it, then you can pick from both sides. It's a little easier. It's okay to do the TP. It'll work. I mean, it's just, sometimes you get lazy and picky, because I like it this way, because I like it that way. So, but that's a way to, you could get more in there on that, because you could plant on cucumber. If they go up, you could easily plant, probably that's 8 foot. You could probably put at least, I would say 6 plants in that. And if you put 6 plants on the ground, that's too much. You won't even find the cucumbers, because there's so much foliage on that. So that could be a way to max it to your advantage on that, as far as that goes on that. It's a little after 7. So I like to kind of keep things on time. So next week is fruit trees, and we're actually going to do it live at the store on that. So what we're going to do is we have some fruit trees out here. I'm going to go over tools a little bit and talk about kind of the principle of trimming the fruit trees. And then we will actually go out and I will trim a tree, and I'll show you what I'm doing, and I'll show you why I'm doing it. I'm taking this one off because I'm going to select this one to keep, because, so that you know. And depending upon how many people show up and what the scenario is, I may actually, we may have enough that we have enough trees. I know if people want to take their shot at trimming, take a stab at it, and tell me, okay, this is what I'm thinking and this is why. And I'll say, yeah, or maybe you want to do this one because, so I'll help you out that way. After that, the next one is trimming, it's roses. And again, we're going to do it outside. The outside ones that we're doing at the store are an hour long. I'll try to do questions too, but, and then we have 2 left after that. And I forgot to put my notes up here, but we have, I believe it's container gardening and then pollinator gardening. If it's not that, it's the other way around. So thanks for tuning in tonight. And hopefully we'll see you next week.
Thank you very much.
Ann.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank
Bye now.
you. Bye-bye.
Bye.